and wine. Top 5. Now we're kind of out of the realignment stuff right now because there's, we're now into the ACC slow cooker of whatever that's going to be. And so since we're out of that right now, some viewer suggestions on top 5s I'll get to. So this is one, top 5 new teams most likely to win the 16-team Big 12. So of the 8 teams that are coming in, who is most likely to win it the quickest? And I thought about this one for a really long time because it's kind of hard to figure a lot of these things. Number 5, I'm going to say Arizona State. I know this is a bit of a stretch, but I might have drank Kenny Dillingham Kool-Aid a little too fast, but by the time they come in, I'm assuming Jaden Rashada will be their quarterback. If he can get a guy like Jaden Rashada, he can get other guys like Jaden Rashada, which means that team could accelerate up to the top of the new Big 12. And remember, when we're talking about the new 16-team Big 12, there's really no history to it because the people who have won most of the titles in that league, particularly Oklahoma, are gone. So this is almost a clean slate altogether for a conference. So when you come to the new teams, I'm saying Arizona State at 5, and I wrestled with that through some of the others, but I do think that if you start with Kenny Dillingham, who's a quarterback guru, and then getting recruits as long as Jaden Rashada turns out to be what we think Jaden Rashada could be, I think they've got a shot to build that up.
Yeah, I mean, history says otherwise, but, it's all about a new start for the Sun Devils and, location-wise, I think coaching-wise, it feels like they've got a little something cooking. And, Jaden Rashada, if he can live up to the billing and not be just the NIL guy, then, certainly that could, teleport them much quicker to the top of the rankings than, otherwise they might be. So, yeah, I mean, there's some ingredients in place to make them, one of the top contenders early on. But, again, history says otherwise. Yeah. So, maybe, history stays as is, or Kenny Dillingham is and was the right hire. And certainly he's got, a fun background that leads you to believe in the energy that he's just shown so far. Obviously the familiarity with Arizona State seems like it's a great fit and one that he's going to be around to really see it through. So, there's a lot of potential, but you've got to reach that potential. So we will see. Number
4, Colorado. And the only reason I say this is because I think that they will go portal crazy and they're going to get some big-time recruits because of that guy that's on the screen there, Deion Sanders. And again, I don't know, most likely to win the quickest could be 5 years. It could be 3 years. It could be 2. We don't know. But I do think that Colorado, while this year might be a little bit wonky and you might see some really great stuff from Colorado and then some losses because their schedule's tough, this is why they brought Deion in, and this is why they're moving to the Big 12, because they can maybe accelerate their path to relevance a lot more.
I mean, if he is who people think he is, I think we're just assuming because it's Deion Sanders that he's going to get them good. And you know what? I don't know. That remains to be seen. I mean, where we've seen him previously, he had a talent advantage of at least some subsequence, of some substance with Jackson State. What else are we basing on? Prime prep? Mm-hmm. Well, that wasn't just, the best time ever. In fact, I don't think he even talks about it or, does any talking about that. So, there's a lot to prove. A lot of it's just hype right now. It's not based off really anything other than it's Deion. And it's like, all right, it's Deion, so there's hype attached to it. I know his sons obviously have some talent and they have a following of their own. And you've got others that you've brought along the way that do as well, Travis Hunter, for example. But, it's a lot of hype. Is it a balloon that's just really empty when you break it? You just pop it and it disappears, or has it got some substance to it? I think that's what everybody's, eager to see this year. And we may not see it all this year because, as much as, okay, great, he went and got 75 players in the portal, and I'm exaggerating there, but I'm not expecting that all to work right away. Mm-hmm. I'm not expecting that to just be some easy, we went and got the players and now it's all fixed. It's a little bit deeper than that. So it's going to be fascinating, and they'll have it all well documented, I'm sure. And, one way or the other, there will be a lot of big opinions. So if anything, they're interesting. And beyond that, who the heck really knows in this first year?
Yeah. I'm not surprised they didn't talk about prime prep. Kind of like Leo DiCaprio is not going to remind you he was in the beach.
The beach was better than prime prep.
You know what? Yeah. There are 8 teams that could make this list of 5, and you have 6 left to make it to 3. And there's a couple of them I'd be interested that they're going to be left out.
But it's not like he's coming from, like, he was the hot OC for Oregon, Kenny Dillingham. Yeah. He's not like a guy who was at Syracuse for 10. The reason we're talking about him is because he's Deion Sanders. We're not talking about him because of the coaching jobs that he's done.
I think a lot of this is going to be predicated on the assistants and how they perform, because he's very much the CEO of this. I mean, and that's what he's trying to be. I think he's so far doing a really interesting and innovative job, but we'll see those results in the field when they actually do play games.
And he was at a couple of other high schools in between, Jackson State and Prime as well. So, he's been around. He's been coaching for a long time. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And if he does well, then we'll hear it, and if he doesn't, then we'll hear it from a whole another audience. But it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this goes.
Yeah. Number 3, BYU. This is a school with a better. I mean, look, it's been a long time, but they did win a national championship. They've been playing a better schedule than most everybody of the new and not the new. Probably a better schedule year in and year out than a lot. They've kind of had to build up on their own. They have kind of with Kalani Sitake's been there a longer time than a lot of the coaches at some of the other places. So I do think that they have a shot to contend a little earlier on than other people. And when I say early, I don't necessarily mean this year. It could be in the next couple of years. But I do think that BYU has got a shot, just based on their history and what they've done recently, that they could jump into the conference and contend, especially playing some of the teams that they played in the conference. They played some Big 12 teams. They played some of these Pac-12 teams and beat them both.
Yeah, they have, but, their schedule also wasn't one where it was just USC and the next week was Baylor and the next week it was Florida State and the next, sometimes it comes across like, well, they were playing this schedule, and you would think that it's just like all like a juggernaut of a schedule. They played some really good teams, but I do think there is something to the conference element of you're playing one after the other with these stakes attached to it. That's something that's going to be new for them. But I do think they're well equipped because they have played really good teams along the way. It's just a matter of how quickly can they adjust to just the grind of the entire thing and the amount of unfamiliarity. Because, they played Baylor, they played Texas in the past, but there's a lot of these other teams that are going to be first time, and vice versa. There's going to be a lot of teams that get their taste of how physical BYU is or how crazy it is to play in Provo, especially at night. So it'll be an adjustment period, but they seem pretty well adjusted. I think the schedule does help, but I don't think it's like a no-brainer that they just slide in because of the schedule they played, that it's just going to be like what it has been,
They might be schedule-wise more prepared than most everyone else, but that doesn't mean the others haven't been playing good people.
No, that's true. To answer TJ's question, I'm talking about the first team of the new ones who could win it whenever that is. Like, again, and there's shorter windows now because of the transfer portal. I mean, that's why Deion's on this list.
Well,
because
one of the new incoming four can win it this year, although not expected to, and that eliminates the other 4 having a chance.
Yeah. Number 2, UCF. What Gus Malzahn is doing on the recruiting trail right now is impressive. And being able to clean up in the transfer portal, which I think he'll be able to do. He's in my opinion, the best state for talent. I think it's 1 and 1A with Texas, but I think the proof's in the pudding about where most of the national championships have come out of in the last 30 years. So he's in Florida. He can now recruit in Texas. Those are things that are really great. He's in a great location. And I think UCF's going to win this thing pretty darn quickly, relatively to everybody else, I think. Because the other thing is he's probably of the new coaches, I'm not trying to rain on anybody else's parade, but he's the most accomplished of the guys coming in.
Yeah, I mean, certainly he is. And so I think that's the biggest reason why. I mean, even more so than the fact that they're in Florida, I think it's the Gus Malzahn factor. If it's just Jim Miller coaching UCF, we would be like, okay, well, they've got the Florida talent, but having Gus Malzahn as your coach is the difference maker there, not even where you're based, although that helps that you've got Gus Malzahn and all that familiarity and all that talent. So, yeah, I mean, if you would have said they were number 1, I wouldn't have really blinked at that. But I understand why they're not because of who's about to be. But, yeah, UCF amongst the new 4, not the new. If it was just status quo as it was supposed to be before the Pac-12 misstepped as much as it did, then yeah, I think UCF was on top of this list, and rightfully so.
Yeah. All right. By the way, Tim Salinas says Texas more fertile than Florida for recruits. It's just IMG who takes kids from across the nation skews Florida to number 1. This predates IMG.
Well, here's the deal. We've discussed this before, and I know that Texas is a proud state with all the coaches, the facilities are unmatched. But Florida has surged very much so, along with what you've even seen with Georgia and Alabama, Georgia especially, when it comes to being fertile in recruiting. Texas is maybe more depth, but there are amazing athletes that people are getting, not just skill people out of the state of Florida. That's been the case for about 15 years.
Yes. Number 1, Utah. Why Utah? They've won the conference that they're leaving twice in a row and could very well win it again this year. They're good enough to, especially if they're healthy. They've proven it. They've got a grizzled, hard-ass coach in Kyle Whittingham, and I think he'll do very well in the Big 12. So I think Utah, to me, number 1. They're already winning conference titles at the Power 5 level. Should be able to easily transition, I would think, into the Big 12 and contend pretty fast.
A rolling ball of razor blades is what somebody referred to them as how they play the game.
Yeah, they've had some really good, last couple of years. I mean, they've had a really good run just in general, but Kyle Whittingham, I think a lot of it, just what they'll do initially will depend on, how long he's around. Not to go put him out the pasture, but he is 63. Just wonder, all the changes in college football. And I think that's a question you can ask of anybody who's been around it a long time like he has. But so long as he's around, then, yeah, they're going to be as formidable as ever, and they're going to be talented, and I think they'll thrive in the new Big 12, and I think they fit well. I think it's going to work out really well, as much as they loved, the Pac experience and the situation there. I don't think that they're really going to skip too much of a beat in the new Big 12, and I think they're going to, be a huge get when we look back on it as far as just the competitiveness level and just the amount of, formidable teams that the conference has. You're losing some name brands, but I think bringing in Utah doesn't make up for an Oklahoma or a Texas, but I do think it offsets it somewhat. On any given year, they'll probably be better than a couple of those two teams, So, like last year, for example, they were better than both. So, I think that they are a home run get for the Big 12, and I understand why there was such a focus on the 4 corners.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Leaving Houston.